George, keep checking the chat. Thank you, George, for turning on the recording. Don Bryant asked, is this for women only? And the answer is no. We welcome men because we count on men to help us burn patriarchy down to the ground, Don. And I know you're on our side with that. So, George, if you could do the introductions, if people could say their name, where they're from, and we have quite a few people here with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. So if people can say any other organization or affiliation, including whether or not they're a WILF member, because it's important for us to know that there's so many WILF members in the call. So name, location, organization.
Great. All right, let's start with Margot. Margot, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah. My name is, thank you. My name is Margot Schulter, and I am located in Sacramento, California, Nisenan territory. Nisenanim Kawim, Hayden Kawim, this land is Nisenan land. And I am a member of WILF. And it just what hit me, that there seems to be, interestingly, in discussions on human rights and WILF, and there's not a lot of talk about ICE or the International Convention again, to abolish to eliminate all forms of racial discrimination. I think that was adopted in UN General Assembly Resolution 2206.
Hey, Margot, you're gonna have
and I'm
to,
just curious why
me.
they don't talk more about that.
I appreciate your having enthusiasm in a topic, but let's do our intros and then we'll have another round of starting our discussion.
I'm sorry.
No worries, it's okay.
3 minutes.
We're glad
I
you're
apologize.
Here. All right, no worries. So introductions, your name and where you are, and if you're a WILF member or any organizational affiliation you want to share. Let's go next to Julia Bishop.
I'm Julia Bishop. I'm in Southport, North Carolina. I am a board member of Project SARN and plan to join WILF in the near future.
Great. Adrian.
I am Adrian Bernal, or Adrian Bernal. I am a broadcaster at WRFG 89.3 FM in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a member of the Women's International Peace and Freedom, also SARN, School of the Americas Watch. And I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Karen.
I'm Karen Stewart-Hill, and I'm with the African Community Centers. And so I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Don.
Since Margot was giving the land recognition, I'll just be brief. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, but acknowledge that we gather on land originally stewarded by the Wyandot, Delaware, Shawnee, etc. I'm with Cleveland Peace Action. I do receive the WILF emails, and we formerly had a sister group or a group connected was Women Speak Out for Peace in Cleveland. For Peace and Freedom in Cleveland, Ohio, and that was a subsidiary or affiliate of WILF. Unfortunately, that group has sort of aged out, but I'll bet you all know some of the members like Linda Park and Yoshiko Ikuda, presente for her. But any case, thank you.
All right, Joan Goddard.
Hi, I'm in San Jose, California, member of the WILF branch and several other organizations, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, Dee.
Sorry about that, everyone. Hi, I was just sending out a message just to see if more people wanted to join. My name's Dee Murphy. I'm Central Minnesota, and I'm a member of WILF as well, newfound member of WILF, as well as secretary for the Green Party Black Caucus, National Black Caucus. Thank you. Over.
Barbara?
I'm Barbara West. I'm in Bath, Maine, And besides a longtime affiliation with WILF, I also helped found 20 years ago a group called Let Cuba Live, which has worked to change US policy toward Cuba, and a member of our local peace and justice organization called PeaceWorks.
Camilla, my apologies if I pronounced that wrong.
No problem. My name is Camila. I usually tell people if you think it in Spanish, it's pretty, simple to say because the I is like an E. I'm from Inglewood, California, and I got invited through my affiliation with the Green Party National Black Caucus, and I'm grateful to be here.
Great. Louise. You want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, Louise?
I had to unmute because it's a *6 on the phone. So I'm Louise Lisi, and I'm a member of WILF in the Philadelphia area. We have one WILF group for the whole greater Philadelphia area. And our land recognition, this is the land of the Lenni Lenape. I'm active in the Middle East group. I'm very concerned about Palestinians, and there's a local Philadelphia group dealing with peace in Israel, Palestine, called Christian Jewish Allies. So that's another affiliation. Over.
All right. Tekla. Tekla Ali.
They wrote hello in the chat.
Yes, I see. Okay, hello. That will do for now. Samantha?
Hi, I'm Samantha from Charlotte, North Carolina, not originally, but now. And I'm a member of WILF, and I'm very active in Charlotte, local Charlotte organizations, including the North Carolina Poor People's Campaign, as co-chair on the Southern Piedmont Circle Committee, also on the state coordinating committee, and the Reimagining America project here in Charlotte, bringing accountability through confession and transformation to create an anti-racist society, and also a member of AMP America, a commissioner on that, and on the ampamerica.org committee here in Charlotte, and active on that as well. As many as some other organizations, but those are my top three, I'd say. Thank you.
Goodness. Tekla put in the chat that she's switching to another computer because she's having audio issues. And we have a couple more people joining us. So I see Geneva. Geneva, would you please unmute yourself and tell us, your name and where you are in any organizational affiliation? Geneva?
It,
There you go.
Geneva, Butts, United African Movement, Brooklyn, New York.
Thanks for being here.
Thank
Brian,
you.
introducing yourself for us, Brian.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Francisco. I'm with the New African Independence Party.
And where are you in the world, Brian?
I'm in Ohio, Canton, Ohio.
Canton, Ohio. Okay. Well, Teresa, I give it to you now. I believe we've all introduced ourselves, and Tekla is going to be on a new computer soon.
Oh, I'm sorry. George, would you tell people where you're located and your organization affiliates?
Hi there. So I'm George Friday. I'm in Gastonia, North Carolina. I am a member of WILF, Piedmont branch, newly formed Piedmont branch, and many other organizations. along with being co-chair of the Piedmont Circle of the Poor People's Campaign with Samantha Turner, who's on the call here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, George. My name is Teresa Elamine. I'm the organizer of the recently formed Fannie Lou Hamer branch of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I'm so pleased that George found the Rosa Parks music because Rosa Parks transitioned on October 24 of 2005. And because she was such an important person, she lay in state at the US Capitol on this day in 2005, October 30th. So that's just a bit of history of the power of the women that we walk behind, so to speak. The Umoja Unity Talks started in December of 2020 with an amazing concert. And that was Umoja, the first day of Kwanzaa, which means unity. So Umoja Unity Talks is a bit redundant because we want to point out that the struggle for unity in the Black liberation movement has been a very difficult journey, and we haven't quite arrived yet. And so today, this is going to be somewhat of an open discussion to talk about what our feelings are and our efforts are to end male domination in the movements. And please ignore that phone ringing. I'm going to mute myself in a minute so that George can start calling on some others while this going on. Thank you, George.
Yes. Briefly, we're just joined by someone with a 404 area code. And if that person can introduce themselves, let us know your name, where you are, and any organizational affiliation, please. I see Tekla's back and connecting to audio.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit.
Okay.
Your name and where you are. And any
Are you talking to me or the new person?
Oh, Lord. I was talking to you, Tekla.
Okay, let me,
other person.
yeah, let me turn off the other, okay, is that better?
Aha.
I have a new.
So 404 is you?
I don't think so. I should be coming in just on the regular Zoom. I think there's another person that may be 404. Because I'm
Okay.
coming in.
All right. Sorry.
Greetings, everybody, and I am happy to be here. I have attended one meeting before and found it very, very interesting. I am a member, I guess, professionally of the National Council of Black Studies, and in terms of my profession, and in my community work, I've been a member of Lincoln Justice Committee, Omaha Justice Committee, a regional co-chair for Jericho, a national co-chair for Jericho, and just recently left that organization and am in the process of founding an organization called Release Exiles and Political Prisoners, with which I want to focus on work with college and high school students to try and get some of the abolition work and some of the freedom for political prisoners and freedom fighters sort of into a generation that is sort of moving about, and with the hope that we can have a little bit more success, and then also with the hope that we can have some agreements with respect to women's voices. So greetings to everybody.
Thanks for being here. And
George,
go ahead. Yes.
I wanted to get away from the ringing phone, but the person who's in the 404 area code, who is not Tekla, that person needs to identify himself or herself. And so the number is the person still with us?
Actually, that 404 number is dropped off, Teresa.
Well, good, then we'll start. I know that Don is using the chat quite a bit, and I'm so glad that Tekla spoke up and reminded us who she is. The Umoja Unity Talks began with a two-pronged purpose to support freeing all political prisoners and prisoners of war, in addition to addressing patriarchy in the Black liberation movement. So it sounds like Tekla could be a good speaker for us today. I'm sorry we didn't pre-plan it, but I would like for us to get agreement on giving Tekla 5 minutes to say a little bit more about that, since I went through a process with the National Jericho movement that made me quite concerned about the patriarchy. So we can kind of talk a little bit about what her efforts are and how she came through this process of challenging patriarchy inside of the movement where we're working to free all political prisoners. If you don't mind, Tekla, George will give you 5 minutes. So she'll give you a 2-minute warning after you talk for 3, and then the 1-minute warning, and then she'll mute you, and then we'll take a stack. And I'll get on the stack, but down from a few other people who might want to say something. Tekla, are you willing to do that for us?
Sure, that's no problem.
Thank you, Tekla.
George, you want me to begin now, or is it?
Yes, ma'am. I will be timing you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, again, I have, without being personal or naming any names, I'll just tell you some of my experiences. One of them was because I raised the issue of patriarchy, and specifically the treatment of African-American women on calls, on, just not so much folks in the group, where also the presence of patriarchy is exemplified, but even I guess I'm more sensitive when we're doing coalition work or guests from outside. Maybe it's easier for me to see it then. And so raising that issue, after raising the issue and thinking that it would be, discussed and maybe we would struggle through it, instead, the experiences I had included an effort to change the bylaws and put me out of the group. Anyone who who speaks against a group member in public, I said, does that include a coalition? But, to put me out, that was unsuccessful, because as a part of our work as women, we're constantly building structures as we go. So I had created, through my suggestions, an advisory board years ago, of which I was a member. So the issue went to me where the advisory board, and I wasn't able to be put off. But in the advisory, and I think people, that was one effort. When that effort failed, I was threatened about speaking about oppression of women. I mean, meaning in these terms, and I won't say who it is, but it was a member not even directly in the group, but affiliated, and on all the emails, that what happened to Malcolm X might happen to you. I mean, I'm serious. It was just that. But because I believe in the work of the organization, I went to we were working when that incident happened. It wasn't a lone incident, but it was one of them. I went to, I finished the program. We went to the tribunal and did everything. And we had to insist that a sister who had done a great deal of work in the community and then with UN work, that we had to insist that she be allowed to talk instead of just the men. Now, not saying that women weren't speaking. Their idea, well, we have a woman here who we've placed here. We've had a woman here who we placed here. We're not talking about that. We're talking about movement women. That they be allowed to talk their experience and talk about their contributions. And so this is not an isolated incident, because I teach history. I know about what happened in the SNCC, with the women. I know what happened with the Black Panther Party. I know what happened with the Combahee Collective, the women who got together. So this is something that is an ongoing education process, which we have, either not done with the brothers to the extent that we think that once we do it, it's solved, or we have not refocused and started building our own on our own as another form of teaching, and also to save our energy for what we're here for. So I'll just say one more thing, and that was that the initial, after years of working on the group, the initial thing that got my attention is when we formed an they formed the structure. They said it wasn't working, so they asked me to form the structure. What is a structure that would work? So I created a structure. You know, wasn't new. Wherever I got it from, it was from our past work. You know, as a movement. But anyway, put it together something that would work, and then immediately I found out that 3 brothers met, and that each man, they called me and said each of us chose a woman to work with us. I said, wait a minute. We need to have elections. This is not how it's done. So that was the thing, that was the root. And 2 women stepped off at that point, myself being one of them. We continued to do the work, but we stepped off the core organizing committee. And so it was a painful experience, but it's good because, you know, one of the things that's happening is I'm realizing I need to network with more women in the movement. I did it in 3 minutes. So that is it. And that's my most recent experience. And you know, I don't know of any solutions except for, you know, when people drain our energy and we're doing more struggle within the organization than being able to build, then it is time to re-examine, and then to try to work with warriors and movement people, you know, who want to build and who treat us as equals.
Well, thank you, Tekla, because I believe you were in the meeting of the Spirit of Mandela tribunal process when I was attempted to be silenced by a white woman comrade in the meeting, and several people spoke up and said, let me speak. And I don't know why your name seemed like it was one of the folks. I do know that Betty Davis was one of the folks, because I believe in complete transparency, Tekla. And so in that struggle through the building of the Spirit of Mandela tribunal, I recall that the women working in the tribunal made it very clear that it wasn't just about Nelson Mandela, it was also about Winnie Mandela. So I was in that process, but the patriarchy became so unbearable. The Southern Anti-Racism Network had given $500 to the process as a sponsor. And because we couldn't seem to get past that, I got a refund. And so I left the process of the Spirit of Mandela tribunal until a young person from Oakland called me and asked me to purchase an ad. So the Southern Anti-Racism Network, in the name of the Umoja Unity Talks, actually purchased a half-page color ad for $250. I'm hoping that they will send me the program book with our ad, but the Spirit of Mandela tribunal process is where things began to kind of show themselves in terms of the age-old patriarchy in certain sections of the movement that is overwhelmingly male-led, and I would say male-dominated. And the freedom of political prisoners has been a rather male-dominated process, even though folks like Afia Nwangaza, who I understand did speak at the tribunal, that she is a very powerful woman in the movement and was once co-chair of the National Jericho and was literally run out of her position. So Tekla, you and I should talk more because I have been involved with this process over time, and I do know some of the things that have taken place. And some people might object to us talking about this in mixed company.
We lost your audio, Teresa. You got about 45 seconds of 3 minutes, but we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Teresa?
Well,
Okay,
I'm unmuted, so I don't understand why you can't hear me.
there was about 30 seconds there where we didn't hear what you were saying.
Well, George, why don't we stop now while I try to see if I can get on with another device? And if you could let Mary White introduce herself and any other new people who have entered the meeting, because we have 19 people in the meeting now.
All right then, so welcome. I think Mary, Deirdre, and Julie are new to the call. So if you'll introduce yourself, tell your name and where you are and any organizational affiliation. Thank you. Mary, then Deirdre, then Julie.
Good afternoon. I hope you hear me. I'm Mary White from Durham, and I'm coming in as an individual, even though I do work with other organizations. And I'm also a part of the Triangle Wealth Organization. So good afternoon to everybody.
Ma'am. Deirdre.
Hello, I'm Deidre Whittlesey. I'm in Columbus, Georgia. I'm part of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch for Wealth. I am co-chair on the board for vice chair, I'm sorry, for SARS. And I do apologize. I had trouble trying to get on the meeting, so glad to be on. Thank you.
Glad you're here. Julie.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I'm at work and I'm just taking my break, and I said, well, why can't I join? So I'm Julie Kabukani, and I'm from the Boston branch, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So that's the Boston branch of WILF, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Julie referred to. And Teresa's going to be getting on a computer, but does anyone have comments or questions based on, you can put your hand up, you can type stat in the chat, and I can recognize you and hear what you've got to say.
Seems as if there's quite a variety of experience in the group. Looking forward to hearing what other people have to say. This is Joan.
Okay, I see Dee Murphy and Karen.
Yay.
Thanks for that comment, Joan.
Hi, I just, I have a lot of questions about how we can defeat things like what has occurred with, I'm sorry, she just got through speaking. Is her name Julie?
Tekla?
Tekla.
She put in the chat hope that she has for the work, but you go ahead and share your comments.
Yeah, it really makes me angry to hear that these things are still happening in today's day and age. And my questions surround how women can kind of work together instead of, it seems like a lot of us have internalized patriarchy as well. And so a lot of times we will, sometimes not speak up when we should to support one another, or wind up, kind of battling one another. And you look at other movements, like males, they will speak with one voice. They will band together to do things like run a woman out. You look at the gay movement. I mean, you insult one, you insult everyone. They band together, they come together, and anywhere that homophobia needs to be defeated, they'll work as a team to draw a light to it and work against them. And so for women, there should be no reason why some of us are picked off and isolated when, a lot of us are in each other's movements and should be supporting one another. So I'm just curious how we can begin to actually learn to work together as a group as well. Thank you. Over.
Thanks, Dee. So folks can raise their hand to respond to Dee. You can also type in the chat, especially type solutions and ideas in the chat. I see Karen, and after Karen, Adrian, and after Adrian, Samantha. Go ahead, Karen. You're still on mute, Karen.
Okay, I thought I had unmuted. When I first got on, I apologize for not being muted in the beginning. I actually was on the phone with one of the political prisoners when I had first dialed in. And so he's, very concerned because he's been locked up now for 49 years. And they still refuse to release him, even though, well, there's a lot going on with his case, but, we're just trying to see what avenues other avenues we can pursue to help him get released.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
If you could, if you're in a position where you can type any information, email addresses, contact or websites in the chat so that everyone has access to it. Thank you.
Well, for me,
Well, George, I'm back on a different device.
you want?
But I think it would be very helpful if Karen could name the political prisoner she was speaking with.
Oh, okay. Yes. Can you hear me? I was with speaking with Hanif Jirobay.
So where is he in behind the walls, in what state?
Right now he's in Florida. He's one of the Virgin Island 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Karen. When you go to the National Jericho Movement website, you'll see the list of all the political prisoners.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
What were you saying, Karen?
No, I said I've been on that site. And I know he's listed on there.
So George, if you could help out by reading some of the stuff that people are putting in the chat. They obviously don't want to use their 3 minutes. So if you could read what Tekla is writing in the chat. We have 19 people on the call, and I believe all of us have introduced ourselves. So George, could you help out by reading what people have written in the chat? And
Sure. And then on the stack, we have Adrian and then Samantha. Tekla put in the chat a bit ago that she hopes that we will begin to form a women's political agenda. And Dee agrees with that. And we found out from Tekla that she works with Veronza Bowers and Ed Poindexter most directly. And I believe that's what we've got there. So Adrian and then Samantha.
Yeah, this is Adrian. I just wanted to say that as a male Latino Chicano, I was very sorry to hear what you said about the way that they treated you at the Jericho movement, and that I just felt like I had to say something and support, because I don't think that I think that's why we're here, to burn down patriarchy. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Samantha.
My comment was also about that I cannot believe that happened like that. That they paired you with them. They picked 3. It's just bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre in this day and age that, oh, we picked 3 women as partners. What? I'm really sorry you went through that. And I echo Dee in that there's got to be a redress among women. And I'd definitely be part of that.
Well, George, I'll get on the stack if no one else wants to get on right away.
No hands are up. Please go ahead.
Well, the most important thing for our comrades and sisters of European descent to understand that there has been an expression within the Black liberation movement from many high-ranking Black revolutionaries that there's no such thing as Black patriarchy. And those of us from the Black radical feminist section of the Black liberation movement have been struggling against that position for as long as I can remember, because I do come out of SNCC Tekla. So in 1965 and 66, when everybody was telling that story about what Stokely Carmichael then said, the only position for women in the movement is prone. And he proceeded to live that out in many different ways. So that's important for us to understand that within the Black liberation movement historically, there has been a history of saying that women should have a lesser position, and women have struggled against that. Always the Third World Women's Formation created by the sister in San Francisco, and I'm spacing on her name, the SNCC sister. But there are quite a few women who have been involved with standing up to patriarchy in the Black liberation movement in particular. But it would be very helpful if some of the sisters of European descent, because there's patriarchy in among white people big time, because white men generally rule this world. So since we're in mixed company, it would be very helpful if Barbara, Joan, Margot, Louise, and others could talk about some of their experience with patriarchy, because we want to burn patriarchy down to the ground across the color line. We want to stop men from dominating in the US Congress. We want to stop white men from dominating throughout the world, including all the proliferation of nuclear weapons and other things. So we need the white sisters to speak up and be a part of this conversation, because you got patriarchy in the European context as well. Over.
Brian asked a question, did Kwame Ture keep that position? And that was the position I guess you mentioned, Teresa.
Well, actually, I don't think so, because when Kwame Ture got prostate cancer, many women in the movement said poetic justice. And he died much too early of prostate cancer in 1998. And so he married Miriam Makeba. It didn't last long, but I still think that people find it hard to change their ways. And so he still had that sense of kind of male superiority. In the last time I had talked with him in the 90s when he was very ill and he was calling around for help, I think he still kind of held on to some of that position. But it was unimportant at the time because his focus in his later years in life was strictly on uniting all of us within the Black liberation movement. And so he was totally focused on that, but he reached out to men when he made that call. So at his special ceremony in May of 1998, he called on Minister Farrakhan, he called on John Lewis, he called all the men that he could think of who were there on the podium with him. And I was struck by that because he was still reaching out to men as the leaders. And that is a kind of cultural thing that existed in the Black liberation movement, which in some ways has not been broken, as we could see from what's happening in National Jericho. And I said what was in the spirit of Mandela process as well. So that's my long answer to that question, having personally known Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. He was the person who recruited me first. Oh, well, George, I do see your lovely hair that I thought was a hat the other night. It's gorgeous. I love the color. Thank you. So,
Thanks, Sister.
are we going to get any of the European sisters to speak out about patriarchy in their communities? It looks like Barbara West is raising her hand.
Go ahead, Barbara.
This is obviously, patriarchy is so deep. It's very alive and well in the peace movement, in my opinion. And it doesn't usually come out in such blatant terms as you're describing, but it's absolutely just as powerful. Very strong and warrior-like women defer to men in our movement all the time, about small things and large. And it's a struggle for all of us. I tended to keep quiet at the beginning because of the focus, as you framed it, as a patriarchy in the Black liberation movement. And I really have more to learn than to say about that. But in the peace movement, it is absolutely alive and well.
Other folks?
Are there any feminists among the European sisters? Are there any feminists?
Since 1967.
Samantha Turner's hand is up. Joan, you go ahead. Samantha after Joan, because you've already gone once. Go ahead, Joan.
Okay. Yeah, I think the fact that I've been active in Women's International League for Peace and Freedom has perhaps protected me from some of the experience that people have had, although, and I'm trying to remember in the past, I know that my first experience was with the Committee for Nonviolent Action in New England, and there was a couple, and she was the stronger person, but he, you know, they worked together, we all worked together, there were lots of men, and I don't remember noticing a patriarchy kind of situation. I'm sure there's lots of it, but I'm trying to remember experiences that I have had that would be something to relate, and I'm not doing too well. Maybe it's my bad memory. Sorry. Thank you.
All righty. Samantha and then Margot.
So I have to say, as a white woman, I've experienced white male patriarchy from the time I was born, and it infantilizes you and it demands you to be the weaker. It dominates you physically. It dominates you in the workplace. You are treated like a pet or you know, a child. So women have, between the men in their lives, and I'm sorry to everybody who's religious on this, but the church has, you know, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that is a patriarchal model, and they have been brainwashed to believe that they are second, they are weaker, they are the partner, they stand behind their men. And I can't barely talk to white women. There are very few white women I can talk to who are strong enough to stand up for themselves, honestly. In all honesty, I don't see women speak up for themselves. That's why you get them all out there voting for Trump. They feel like they need men in charge. They've been told they need men in charge, and they never figure it out. I see a lot of them who are intellectually superior, earning more money, whatever the deal, defer to weaker and weaker, corrupt men who've cheated on them, men who've hit them, men who've made terrible decisions, and defer to them even though they know better. But I'm sorry, George, 1 minute. Yeah. And they protect them. The women are taught to be the nurturers, and so they protect and hide for these men. They cover their stupidity. That's
George, can I go on stack? I wanted to reply.
Certainly. And Margot put some info in the chat, which I'll read after Tekla if Margot doesn't want to go. Go ahead, Tekla.
I just wanted to respond to the sister who was just talking. Actually, what the brothers did in the situation I was describing is they rolled on. They said, we'll just roll on. And they chose white women to fill those posts. Initially white women, and then they, at the very end, because they got constant criticism on the webinars, they brought in a sister who I think it may be Inuit or Polynesian sister as well. But initially they brought in religious-minded white women who would support them and go forward with them in the work.
absolutely. Wow. Yep.
So Margot, do you want me to read your comments in the chat, or do you want to go?
You may read my comment first if you'd like.
Okay.
And you can count that against my time if you'd like.
No, it's not that serious. Okay. My comment was that Wilf needs to focus intersectionally on the International Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2106 XX 21 December 1965. Goodness, that's been around for a minute. And the Convention for the Elimination of All Discrimination Against Women, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 34/180, which was 1979 on the 18th of December. ICERN, the first one, and CEDAW, the second. We will burn both patriarchy and white supremacy to the ground. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Tekla responded there with excellent. I would add adopt, release political prisoner of abolition and mass incarceration, focus on exposing and getting rid of all the intersectionality of racism, sexism, and colonialism. Can I get an amen? Talk about putting out what you really want. All right, Margot, I'll put your hand down, lower your hand. And any other folks for the stack?
Well,
thank you.
Certainly.
Oh, go ahead, Julia. Was it Julia or Dee who was saying something?
Julia, you look like you were talking, but you're muted. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that since I grew up with a Cherokee grandfather and Cherokee great-grandmother, my grandfather hated himself for who he was. He was very patriarchal. However, he was raised in a matriarchal society. And he was a very angry man. He didn't live very long. In fact, his mother outlived him. And she taught me that we're to respect our women, that women are our healers, they're our founders, they're our life givers, they're our water protectors, our land protectors, and they're the ones who help heal the society. And I believe within my heart and soul that we need to come out as women and come all together. And I agree with what they said about the churches. I was raised in church my entire life, and it is very, very, they want you to be extremely submissive. I was not. In fact, I always got a whipping because we're in the South, you know. I always got whipped because I asked the hard questions, and I told them that, you know, I thought we were all equal. And I will say that till the day I die. You know, they call you little things. You might go out to the store and they'll see you and they say, what do you say, little lady? I'm not a little lady. I'm grown. I got gray hair. I'm old. You know, speak to me as an equal or as your senior with respect. And I think everyone should learn that. And it's a hard thing to know that they're doing this still in organizations that are supposed to help the world. It's very disturbing.
Teresa, go ahead.
Well, I think we shouldn't be so generic in the conversation, given that so many of us are actually members of the oldest women's organization in the world, that the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom has been around for 106 years. So in terms of these call for women to work together, I think WILF has exhibited that over these 100 plus years. And so if we are only working inside of WILF, as Joan seems to imply, then you miss what's happening in the larger world, because men are half of it. And so when we're fighting for pay equity, we're challenging the fact that men who generally control the payrolls are not willing to give us our equality or our equity of pay. And Joan knows how long we've been fighting the fight for pay equity, and we're still not there yet. So we're looking at institutional patriarchy, just like institutional racism and white supremacy. That's why the UN conventions are so important, and the commissions are so important that Margot raised, because inside of WILF now, we have the Advancing Human Rights Committee, which has agreed to take up these issues around freeing political prisoners as part of the UN Decade for People of African Descent, which closes December 31st, 2024. And one of the key demands is to end the human rights violations against people in prison, particularly political prisoners, and to demand reparations. So WILF is poised to do something in the larger world, since we have 2 UN initiatives inside of the Advancing Human Rights Committee. And those of us who are active in WILF and active in advancing human rights know that that is the case. Over.
Louise?
I want to go back to that issue about white men. The whole European system is totally based on patriarchy. I mean, women in the 1700s and 1800s, they could not own land. I mean, a married woman, if her husband died, she had, she could not inherit the land. You could not handle your own money. I mean, the male control of European society is really overwhelming. I mean, I don't have 3 minutes worth to say. It's just, I mean, that is the basis of European society, is completely run by men and very militaristic. So we have a lot to change to get away from that. I mean, a federal legislation to let people women keep their own name when they got married, I think it's like 1970 or something. I mean, women weren't able to have bank accounts. I mean, it's very recent to have women being really independent, and it's really fought. I mean, men try to keep it the way it was, to have total control. That's just what I wanted to bring up.
Totally true, right up there with white supremacy. Camila?
I just really want to say that I really appreciate, our, elder comrades, here, really speaking about the knowledge from which, they had their experiences and things like that. Because as I'm kind of like an old head millennial. I was an 80s baby. I'm an 80s baby. So I've been like very appreciative of everything that has been shared here. And I think there should be kind of a movement towards, getting more young women involved in movements and being politically educated on these issues. Because, I mean, there's a lot of mainstream stuff out there that, people latch on to because it's like the trend or it's the, cool thing of the time. But I have yet to be like in a space where, I can like be free and safe to be as radicalized as I am. Because I mean, like I got radicalized, to be honest, like about 5 years ago, like when the whole Bernie Sanders thing came about, and there were things that I had absolutely no idea about. And I think getting more young women in spaces like this, in forums like this, and really learning from our elders about how we should go about doing this work, how we should go about being involved, being educated and stuff will really go a long way.
Thanks a lot, Camila. And I want to pose Camila's question back to us. How do we go about this? Those of us who've been around for decades and decades more than Camila, we had to endure white supremacy and patriarchy. So what were the methods that worked, and what might you recommend that we do, not just within WILF, but within the branches where we are, and ultimately within the communities where we are? What are your recommendations around burning patriarchy down to the ground?
Well, George, I'll jump in. I first heard that phrase from a 6-year-old girl a few months ago. There was some kind of video on Netflix where there were these students giving kind of speeches to their classes. And her speech was on burn patriarchy down to the ground. And her mother and father were in the audience. And it was just such an amazing clarity at 6 years old about how girls were relegated to certain things versus what boys could do. I had never heard such clarity from a child so young about patriarchy. But more importantly, the Black Radical Congress, which was formed in 1998 in Chicago, when we came together, 2,000 people, Black people, we came together. And that was when I first heard Amiri Baraka say, there's no such thing as Black patriarchy. I looked at his wife, Amina Baraka, and she said he believes that. You know what? And so we both laughed. And often when we would go out, the three of us, I said, let's get him drunk and beat him up. And we would always joke about it because he really expressed the worst of what was happening in this day and time in the Black liberation movement in terms of the roles that women should have and not. And so, we have to build organization. So inside of the Black Radical Congress, we built the Black Feminist Caucus. And when we met in Chicago in October, after some discussion among the women active in the LGBT movement and the women who consider ourselves socialists and Marxists, we came to the conclusion that in order for us to be free as Black women, we must end capitalism, imperialism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. So we're not looking at patriarchy separate from all the other oppressions, but we have to build unity around how we come together as men and women so that we can burn the other systems of oppression down. As long as we have an attitude that women are somehow less than when we know we're not, that is the fundamental problem. So we should not be in organizations D, where we allow 2 men to be co-chairs. And I'm calling out the Black Caucus right now, because when I talked to one of the co-chairs about it, and I said, how did you let that happen? And so it was a bunch of political stuff that went on, but I say the women, D, and the other person who says she came here through the National Black Caucus of the Green Party, we should not have 2 men co-chairs on anything in the Green Party, when the Green Party's one of its 10 key values is feminism. So D, I say we have to do what we can in the organizations that we're in to stop patriarchy showing itself in the way it's showing itself in the Black Caucus of the Green Party right now. Just calling it out, just calling it out. Over.
So I think Margot typed in stack and Julia did. Dee also added to the chat. I think Dee, you were referring to internalized patriarchy, that they have to get to the point where they see it for themselves. It comes with experience. Once the young and cute wears off and the mic dries up, then some women begin to see it for what it is. Can't say I completely agree with that. And then also adding that feminists and women in the talk to me thing, 60s maybe? Oh goodness. In the 60s opened a lot of doors for them, so they don't see the other ways it creeps in until they reach that stage. Well, alrighty then. That's what Dee wrote in chat. And then Margot, did you type stack?
Yes.
Okay, hold on though, because Julia hasn't gone as much. So we'll do Julia and then Margot, Camila again, and then Dee had her hand up, but it's down now. So it's gonna be Julia, Margot, and Camila. Go ahead, Julia. You're muted, Julia. I can tell you're on a roll, but you're muted.
Yeah, I run my mouth, sorry. I'm just wanted to brag on my granddaughter. She's a part of her student advisory committee at school. The first thing they did was address the male patriarchy and the misogyny that was going on at school. The girls were getting dress coded on a daily basis. And also BIPOC were being, sorted out, and they're the ones that were being targeted. And they were like, your shorts are too short. You can't do this. You can't wear that. And they addressed that. And I'm just very proud of her for coming from a matriarchal family and learning that it's okay to speak up for yourself and you don't have to bow down to any man. Thank you.
All right. Camila.
I just wanted to kind of, I guess, echo the sentiments from Ms. Teresa. Sorry, about like accountability in our organizations. I've been in organizations where I've been like labeled kind of like the angry Black woman because I did step up about the accountability when it comes to the leadership, when it comes to not, the leadership not having diverse representation in them and things like that. And I think that should be more, there should be more support in organizations about that, because you don't want people in power that are very egocentric and they're not centric to the values of the organization as a whole, or even within a chapter or anything like that. And I've been involved in, even within the past a year, in organizations where there just seems to be a lot of organizational politics around, just people being in it for like the wrong reasons, whether they're male or female. But I do agree, like as far as the National Black Caucus and the Green Party, but also in other organizations, is that there should be kind of a structure where there is a culture of inclusivity and definitely leadership and management that is centric to the values and the purpose of the organization, and not people's ideologies or hidden agendas or things like that.
Thanks for sharing recommendations and your strong opinion there. Thank you. Samantha's hand is up, and it's great to hear from you again, Samantha. And Dee's hand is up. There are several folks on the call who haven't said anything. I want you to think about it. We've got about 30 more minutes together, but we're gonna go with Dee and then Samantha. Go ahead, Dee.
George.
Yes.
Don Bryant, I think, wants to say something, and I don't think he has done anything much. Well, he hasn't said anything. He's been writing in the chat. So maybe you could start with Don and then do the other part of the stack.
Thank you so
Come on,
much,
waiting.
Teresa.
I could wait. It's all good. Thank you.
No, Don, speak up, man, speak up.
So here we go. Thank you so much, Teresa. Good to see y'all again. And so I worked at the post office as a letter carrier. I'm retired now. And that is one of the industries that we're all equal. And, you know, I would say we were pretty darn equal, men and women. And I think the post office has about 43% women in the working, in the working industry. So that was pretty cool. I mean, I know a lot of the other industries don't have that. And I should also say, going back to my upbringing, my mom pretty much laid it out that patriarchy wasn't going to work in our family. So she had 4 sons and a daughter, and I was the youngest son. And we always stood up. We broke patriarchy in our family, I think, because we were always on my mom's side, being that my dad was more patriarchal. Any case, and also I've been raising children since 1976 between daughter and grandchildren. So I get the best of both worlds. I mean, I know I have the white male privilege, and I'm not denying that, but I have seen other sides of maleness. I've seen the nurturing side of upbringing, children. So I just want to say that. And yeah, we need to bury patriarchy, white supremacy. I'm totally on board with that. I just want to at least let you know where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Don. I'm in Cleveland with y'all. All right, so we got Dee and then I believe Samantha. And please put stack in the chat or raise your hand. Go ahead, Dee.
And a nice segue from what Don just spoke about. My father raised me during my formative years. And he always raised me to be a person first, to use my mind. And I wasn't male or female, I was a human being. As a result, I run into a lot of situations because I am female, where I will speak my mind or make suggestions in organizations. And then even other women accuse me of either inserting myself, being overly dominant, or telling me what I can and cannot say, which is kind of brings me back around to the question about women working together. I don't think one woman should ever tell another woman not to speak or have an opinion, ever. I think that we should, be as grassroots and democratic as we like to see everyone else be. I can tell you, on behalf of the Green Party, there's a lot. I can't divulge as a secretary how things were orchestrated. I know that a lot of people are speaking, either haven't been, in the meetings where some of this has gone on, or newer. But I can explain that several members of the caucus were targeted in orchestrated fashion. And being that we're a grassroots organization, we have to listen to the votes of our membership. At the time that we wound up with 2 male co-chairs, one coach, no women ran. And there were different reasons why different women didn't run. I didn't run. I was newly back, and I had taken a break, come back, and it was like my first meeting where this happened, where myself and 2 other people who also happened to be lavender were targeted by a group of people that wanted to, they're very xenophobic, they're very anti-homophobic, and a whole list goes on with these people. But because they had the numbers, this is how we're lucky to even have a person that is still in place that works on behalf of the caucus. And in time, things are being worked on. Thank you, over.
The stack right now is Sam, and then I forgot Margot. So Sam and Margot.
Okay, I'm gonna speak really quick. So when you see white supremacy, you need to point it out. When you see a bunch of white men making decisions for a diverse community, you have to challenge their relevance in decision-making. You have to challenge them in the courts. It's unconstitutional. Most of the decisions they make are absolutely unconstitutional. So we have to get and find attorneys that are in the fight. The one problem I see is that even when we fight white supremacy, white patriarchy, sometimes we end up with white matriarchy taking over. And we don't want that either. So we have to build with the design that we build from the bottom up. And we build we build together, not with a supremacist model. And I'm out.
Okay.
Okay. Should I go ahead?
Please.
And I'll take your time signals, George. We'll keep watch on the time. Basically, what's really hit me hard is in order to burn patriarchy down to the ground, we've got to burn white supremacy down to the ground, because a lot of racism grew out of rapacious patriarchy in Europe. It was just convenient because it was first directed against Jews and Arabs. Modern racism in the 15th century was limpieza de sangre. And then as the slave trade expanded, Portugal got involved with the slave trade in the 15th century. And as the genocide on the Turtle Island against the indigenous nations expanded, they found it convenient to expand the concepts they directed against Jews and Arabs towards people with darker skin. And that's the whole concept of whiteness ties in with this. I think nobody should identify with whiteness. I mean, some people have light skin privilege, myself included. We've got to own up to that. But I think that in order to throw, because I realize how far back the MAFA goes, it's amazing. The human trafficking in African people goes back time of Herodotus, goes back 2,500 years. That's a significant slice of the history of patriarchy. So I think the road for freedom for all women maybe lies through Africa. And we're going to burn patriarchy and white supremacy down to the ground.
Margot, that term, the road for freedom for all women goes through Africa. I'm gonna remember that for a minute. So Tekla wrote some recommendations in the chat. Tekla, do you want to come off mute and share those, please?
Well, these are some agreements that we suggested. We tried to reconcile with the brothers. We said, let's do after the tribunal, let's have post-tribunal, and let's try to get back on some reasonable footing. So we said some of them would be greater inclusion of women, including senior women activists, greater inclusion of African-American and indigenous leadership, include integral role for white allies, but one includes their principal acknowledgement of privilege, as someone was just saying, and non-acceptance and non-practice of white privilege. So they refused to speak with us on those, but I just wonder if they would be useful to have some working agreements. It sounds like we already have the working agreements, but to somehow codify them if they're not already. And then with ensuring women in leadership, we will begin to have self-determination and devise our own solutions. I'm confident.
Thank you. I don't see any hands or anything in the chat.
Ryan's hand is up.
Oh goodness, I missed that. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brian.
Good evening, everyone. So yeah, I'm a millennial as well. I was born in the late 80s. So a lot of this history and stuff that you all are speaking about, I don't know too much about. But I'm glad that everybody is kind of bringing all of this out to our attention. For me, I'm I guess my question or a lot of this stuff, happens behind closed doors. So, a lot of times I'm not aware of it. And what I'm trying to do, I guess, is I like those recommendations that were put out there, but I guess my question is like further, how do those of us that are following behind the work that you all have done, how do we make sure that we don't make those same mistakes from previous times? And I'm speaking directly as a male. So I'm trying to form that in a question.
Okay, we've got Teresa on stack, and Don, you might want to respond to the young man so he hears advice from a male, just not to put you on the spot, but whatever. But Teresa's on stack.
And the reason why I asked that is specifically what has been talked about with the Spirit of Mandela campaign and all of that, because I actually attended that event and everything. So not in person, but virtually. So but yeah, that was part of the reason I asked that question.
Teresa.
Well, thank you, Brian, because the New African Independence Party is a very important formation in the Black liberation movement. And I think looking at that closely, I think is a starting point. We have to look at our own organizations closely. The Southern Anti-Racism Network is a feminist formation. When you look at who's listed on our board and the leadership, you see overwhelmingly women. I think there, out of 15 board members, there are 3 men. Uh, uh, Comrade Adrian Chicano, feminist in every sense of the word. So the men who come in to our formation are clear that they are bringing patriarchy down to the ground, be it Alberto Jones, Afro-Cuban, or, so this is how you know where you are in a space and time when you look around and you don't see the expression of male domination in the formation that you're in. I think in WILF, the struggle has been among women trying to decide if they are really feminists. I'll never forget in the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee, and perhaps Louise can speak to this, there was a question about whether or not people were really feminists. I found that quite odd because all of the work that we do with Code Pink, with WILF, I always saw as feminist peacemaking in a way that we were willing to be out in this male-dominated war environment of the US empire, and we're ready to stand up to the men who insist on having all these nuclear weapons, that we would be willing to stand up to an $8 trillion war budget when they drop the Build Back Better joke down to 1.75 trillion. 8 million for war, 1.75 trillion for women. So we can look at the patriarchy. It's all around us. But what I want us to really focus in is this increasing misogyny, I mean, outright hatred of women and the violence against women. The domestic violence is off the charts lately. So we have got to see how bad it's gotten in the middle of a pandemic. Over.
Anyone on stack? Any hands raised? Y'all help me now. I don't see any hands raised. I'm looking in stack. Don
Well,
Bryant.
George, thank you. If Brian could I'm sorry to ask this, but could you restate your question? And I'd be glad to speak to it if that was requested. You know, I've been active in many organizations locally. Still to this day, you know, we're trying to get utilities for all. I work with the End Poverty Now Coalition, and I'm on board with what Teresa just said about let's cut that Pentagon budget at over $700 billion and pay for a good part
Don,
of
I
them.
called you out, not Brian, as the only other male on the call, because he was
Yep.
asking about how to deal with patriarchy, what recommendations we had for him dealing with patriarchy, but he also specified that he meant the kind of patriarchy that was experienced through the Spirit of Mandela process.
Just to say that, I'll be brief. Whenever I'm working on an organization and we setting up some speakers, I'm saying, well, wow, let's get a little bit more diversity here. You know, we've got too many men speaking, you know, I mean, that comes automatic. We always try to bring the voices from the community out and not hear from, you know, all the professionals all the time, all the experts all the time. I'm sorry if I'm not answering, but I think it's just having an eye for diversity is so important. And in fact, I will always volunteer to take notes in a meeting as opposed to trying to facilitate a meeting, just saying.
Well, George, I think that Brian is really trying to raise the level of discourse around the Jericho movement stuff. And Tekla, I would just say that my big point in talking with the national leader of the national Jericho movement was, is the Spirit of Mandela Tribunal an event, or is it going to have a strategic plan that's going to lead to getting all of them out? And so I think at this point in time, rather than getting bogged down in the weeds of all this patriarchy, we have to look at how women pursue organization and organizing, because my experience in the labor movement and everywhere is that when women come together, we want to know what is it that we're going to get done. And I think that is how we address male domination and patriarchy and all the egos. Well, this thing that, you know, like I said, you got the Mumia campaign, you got the Russell Manure, you got all these different campaigns. And when I asked them about it, they said, well, everybody's got their own lawyers, and so everybody's pursuing their own strategy. But the hundreds of thousands of dollars we've been putting in freeing political prisoners through lawyers, and it is outrageous. It's outrageous, because when the first death warrant was signed for Mubia in 1995, I was in Boston. And to be quite frank, it was white radicals and socialists who were fighting each other, the Bolshevik tendency and the Spartacus League, or something ridiculous, Margot, you know what I'm talking about. And Mumia put out the call, you're gonna get me killed if you don't stop fighting among yourselves. And I say the same thing should apply here, that we recognize that the lack of unity has meant that a whole bunch of folks like Sundiata Acoli are in prison for no good reason at 84 years old. So if we work together and concentrate on that and do the kind of work that we need to do and respect the leadership of women, and I think I watched that scenario that Tekla talked about. Oh, we won't get the Black women, we'll go and find some white women because they'll be easier to deal with. That happened in the in the formation with, and I call names, okay? In the formation with Kali Akuno, which I call the Kali Akuno syndrome, because it was all those white women leading in that formation. I can't even remember what it is. Maybe George can tell me. But we have that scenario where Black men move to get white women to lead in the process rather than Black women. So it is a very complicated thing that we have to deal with as Black women, Tekla. So I was looking to see if I had your number, but I think I asked you for it the last time, and I need you to drop it in the chat so that we can talk, because your experience and my experience is similar with what happened with National Jericho. So if you could drop it in the chat, thank you. And George, it appears that we have 18 people in the meeting, but it keeps going from 16 to 17, and I don't understand what's going on. Since it's your account, George, can you explain what's going on? Because it appears that there are 18 people in the meeting, but it says 17.
I don't know what's going on myself. We lost.
See, I'm looking at the gallery view, and there are 9 on each page. There are 2 pages.
Okay. I actually see 17 and mine says 17. I don't see 18. But I see 4 rows of 4 and 1 extra person. That's 17.
I see 2 pages of 9, and on each page, there are 3 rows of 3.
Does someone have a recommendation of helping us here? We could do a roll call of everyone. I see Deirdre, Samantha, Teresa, Mary, Brian, Adrian, Karen.
Well, George, why don't I do this? Since I'm the one who's seeing 18. On the page 1, there's Teresa, George, Deidre, Don, Brian, Margot, Joan, Tekla, Barbara. And then we go to page 2, that's 9 people. Then we go to page 2, and there's Barbara again. So that's where the glitch is. So Barbara is on both pages. So Barbara, are you on 2 different instruments?
No.
I am not.
It just duplicated Barbara, I guess, which is why it's showing 18 when I look at it, because I see that Barbara is being counted twice. So I think you're right, George, it's only 17. So I think it's only 17.
Karen's on twice on Don's. It just might be how Zoom is trying to, make us think we're crazy.
Well, now we know there really are only 17 people in the meeting. So thank you, George. You know how I am about security issues. And so we know that we are 17. Okay, thank you, George. So I think we should use these last minutes before we start playing. That's a good thing to put up. A nice little comic relief here. So could everybody take a look at the screen share that I received from someone else, and I posted it to my story on Facebook. And Joan, it really reflects what I was talking about earlier. We're still fighting for equal pay and pay equity. And the woman is saying equal pay, women's rights are human rights. And she's saying, these signs belong to my grandmother and then to my mom, and here I am still holding them up. So she's kind of saying, what in the world are we doing? So that's the message there.
Yes, indeed.
Isn't that a great message?
It really is.
Okay, Well, George, I'm thinking we should use these last few minutes to sum up what sort of actions we're going to take. I think Tekla, hopefully, and I are agreeing to work together since I have financially supported the spirit of Mandela Tribunal. And I've definitely indicated that I'm totally down with getting them all out, as we've experienced from these going on 13 months of conversations.
Well, we've got
about-
Adrian's hand is up.
Okay, but Tekla, did you put your stuff in the chat? Your phone number, email in the chat, Tekla.
Yes, I put my phone number in the chat. I also am on Stack. I just wanted to say one thing to the young brother when it gets around to my turn.
Okay, let's get Adrian and then Tekla and then back to Teresa for the action.
I'll be real brief. I just wanted to say that in the Zapatista movement in Mexico and in the movement in Venezuela and in Nicaragua, that we do have a number of, it's just built in that we have half, the groups are made up of half men and half women. In Mexico, the president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, is very conscious of that. And I think that as men, we just need to stand up and say, we need more women on that. That's all.
Thanks. Tekla.
Yes, I wanted to say to the question of the young brother Brian, anything that I said was not to discourage your participation. I attended the event, even though there was a sort of a vague threat out there. I attended the event. I got my brochure. My name is in here on the academic committee, which I led. It's in alphabetical order, but I led the committee. But I roomed with Sister Afia. We went, we had a ball. We met with other people who wanted to organize on a non-sexist basis. We were, actually shooed out of one room by one of the white women organizers again, because we were told we couldn't meet there prior to, asking to meet. So what I'm saying to you is that Matula Shakur called for that gathering back in 2004 or something. I got involved in 2014. It's bigger than the personality of anybody. It's bigger than the personality of anybody. So you don't stop what we're doing. We're just going to have to correct as we go. If that means starting other organizations that we can get more done through, we do that. And as a man, I hope that means raising your voice when you see something that's not right, and insisting upon equality in leadership and in voice. So for us, it's just part of the struggle against colonialism and patriotism. We just keep on going. I've made a shift because I can't. I'm 56 years old. I can't spend half of my time arguing with those brothers. But I'm not stopping the work.
And I'm 73, Tekla, and I'm willing to argue with them till I die. But let me ask you this, Tekla. Is this your number, 704-449-0349? So are you in the Charlotte area?
I am in New York. Actually, I go back and forth. I have dual state. So I'm in New York right now, but I do also live in the Charlotte area. So I am there frequently. And so if you let me know when, we can definitely meet either by phone or we can go have coffee.
I want to talk with you about joining the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. So I will be calling you in the next few days. So are you in the New York City area?
I am actually about 6 hours from New York City today. I was in New York City last weekend at the tribunal, but I'm in upstate New York now.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll talk in a few days. I'll give you a call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So George, if we could do a kind of sum up of where we go from here in preparation for our last session, which will be the last Saturday in November. In Tekla, we often ask people to speak about patriarchy. I know this has been quite specific, but we offer a $200 honorarium. You can decline it if you don't need it. But when Nellie Hester spoke, we provided her with a $200 honorarium, and we provided numerous political prisoners with former political prisoners like Sekou Odinga and many others, and most of the MOVE women, because most of the women political prisoners I find have come out of the MOVE organization. And so most of them have spoken over this year and receive honoraria. And I think that based on your experiences and what we're going to talk about going forward, that you could frame your 10 minutes around what we're gonna do next. If you would be willing to give that a try for the November meeting, and you would be our 10-minute speaker to kick off the conversation. So what is the date for that meeting, George? I think it was November 26th or something. It's the last Saturday in November. George, are you there?
I think it's probably the 28th because Monday is the 29th. I'm not 28th, 27th, sorry. Monday is the 29th. That's all I know for sure.
It is the 27th. I had to look it up. Saturday, the 27th of November.
Well,
So I would be, I'm sorry. I will be traveling at that time, but I could do the following month if it's desired. I couldn't do November. Actually have a couple of talks that I'll be doing, but I could do the following month if it's desired, or into January. Anytime in December. Mm-hmm.
Well, November will be our last month for the kind of open discussion I said. So we will have an open discussion on November 27th, similar to this one. But what I am trying to find is a woman who participated in the Spirit of Mandela Tribunal, who has not spoken in the Umoja talks before, and Afia has spoken in the Umoja Unity talks before. So she received an honorarium in the first grouping of people. And so I'm trying to get Daquee as a possibility because she stood strong that we're not just talking Nelson, we're talking Winnie Mandela as well. And I know how to get in touch with Daquee. So I'll ask her if she could do a report back on the Spirit of Mandela Tribunal, and then we could address these other issues as well. And hopefully some of the brothers involved will join us on the November session. So let me work on that strategy. And so if we're at the point where we're saying, if all hearts and minds are clear, so George, we don't have to drag it out. So let's just check to see if there are any folks who want to make any last comments before you put on the peace song, that peace music that we're gonna go out with, because everybody wants peace. We gotta struggle sometimes, Joan, in order to get to the peace. And so that's what we do often. We struggle so we could get to the unity and so we could get to the peace. See, there's a saying in the Black Liberation Movement, unity, struggle, unity, because we understand that struggle has to be a part of getting to unity. We start out in unity and then we find ourselves in struggle, but then we're working towards unity all day long. So George, check to make sure there are no final comments before we roll the music. And then we'll save the chat, save the recording, Mercy. George, because you save the chat well. And so you can send it out to folks. We won't send out the recording to folks, but we can send out the chat to all of the 200 or so people who receive the information.
Great. Sorry, Louise, that we lost you. Glad you came back just in time to say goodnight or good evening. Any last comments from anyone?
If you don't mind, I was going to say you've got Tekla's phone number in the chat, so I don't know if you want to send that to everybody, but in any case, just saying.
Tekla, are you all right with that? Very good. All right, then. Take care, everybody. And do save the chat. If you don't know how, you can email me, and that email's on the flyer that you have, and I will send it to you.
For some reason, George, on my Chromebook, there doesn't seem to be a way to save the chat. So if you could save the chat and send it to me.
Yes,
but
I will have the
say-
chat. I can send it to anybody who needs it.
Well,
Whenever
let me ask this. I did make some pretty cogent remarks in the chat, but you know me, accountability, consistency, full transparency, full disclosure. There are no secrets with me. So I don't mind any of my comments in the chat going out to everybody who received these notices. But if somebody else does, now is the time to speak up if you wrote something in the chat that you don't want in the public domain.